The women you see on screen were part of a large group that reacted when they were called to action during the start of World War II. These women were crucial to the war effort. Without them, the history of World War II may have been written very differently. During World War II, many aviation manufacturing jobs were left unfilled as the men were called to serve their country. This led to a historic time for women in aviation. You may have heard of the name Rosie the Riveter, but who exactly was she? Or was she even a person at all? My name's Ava, and let's dive deeper into who the women of World War II really were. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland, which sparked the biggest and deadliest war in history. It would become known as World War II, and was fought between the Allied forces of the United States, Great Britain, and the USSR versus the Axis powers, which were made up of the Nazi Germany, Japan, and Italy. World War II lasted a total of 6 years and became the deadliest war of all time. In the United States, the war became a nationwide effort, with resources diverted to the war such as steel, aluminum, and eventually manpower. With thousands of men being called to battle in service of their country, factories that were making supplies for the war were losing workforce they needed. Before the war, most women did not work outside the home, and if they did, they worked jobs traditionally considered to be women's work. These jobs included teaching, domestic service, cleric work, nursing, and library science. This sudden void left by men in the factories that made airplanes, munitions, and other war supplies came in as an opportunity for women who wanted to support their country. They stepped in to fill these roles, working jobs historically considered to be men's work. This ushered in a new era of women in aviation, sparking a rise in government advertising, rallying the country to join the war effort. And so, Rosie the Riveter was born. Rosie the Riveter has been traced back to being a creation by not just a single individual, but a whole compilation of creations, starting with a prototype created by an artist from Pittsburgh named J. Howard Miller, which was featured on a poster from Westinghouse Electric Corporation, which included the words, "We can do it." Then, on May 29, 1943, the Saturday Evening Post published a cover image painted by Norman Rockwell, a very famous artist at the time. Finally, a song written by John Jacobs Loeb and Red Evans raised her presence even further, and solidifying the name forever.
All the day long, whether rain or shine, she's a part of the assembly line. She's making history, working for victory. Rosie the Riveter.
Rosie the Riveter was an iconic symbol of women during World War II. But what specifically did women do? In short, almost everything the men they replaced did. This ranged from general maintenance on aircraft and equipment to very specialized skills such as welding, machining, and of course, riveting. In fact, during this time, manufacturers found that there were many jobs that women did better than the men they replaced, especially jobs that required more finger dexterity and patience. Women weren't limited to just production roles during World War II. They filled roles such as flight nurses and also joined the military non-combat roles in organizations such as the WWII and the WASPs. WACS, or WAAC, stood for Women's Army Auxiliary Corps. This army was the first military branch to enlist women into the war effort. Their mission was to support the army by releasing men from administrative duties to serve in combat. Some of their roles included medical care professionals, welfare workers, clerical workers, cooks, messengers, military postal employees, chauffeurs, and telephone and telegraph operators.
In the link trainer, we practiced flying under simulated instrument conditions. After all, we wouldn't have been here if we didn't love to fly. So when it came to the real thing, I doubt if you could have found an eagerer bunch of beavers than the Women's Air Force Service Pilot, the WASPs. Our final objectives were never lost sight of on these training flights. To be capable of relieving male pilots from non-combat flying duties, of maintaining a safety record comparable to any compiled by airmen. Not that we ever forgot to bring our most important tools, Only one hurdle now remained before graduation. We crammed hard for those final exams, and now we were ready.
The Air Force also had a group of women they classified as WASPs, or Women Air Force Service Pilots. They were technically civilians that flew non-combat flights, which included ferrying planes, towing targets, and performing test flights to free up male pilots for combat. From 1943 to 1944, over 1,000 women flew over 60 million miles. While they stayed civilian throughout the war, years later, in 1977, they were recognized and given military benefits.
I used to be a librarian. We're building planes for the Navy. What we're doing isn't just a job. It's a trust and an obligation we owe to those out there battling for our cause.
While women were beginning to thrive in these new roles, not everything was ideal. Women faced inequality and discrimination in their new jobs. Women on average were making 53% or less of the pay compared to the men doing the same jobs. In October of 1943, many women went on strike for a week, demanding more equality in pay. After the strike, women still made less than 60% of the pay the men made for the same jobs. As the war ended and the men returned home, they were allowed to return to their jobs, essentially pushing most women back out of the workforce, either through demotions or losing their job altogether. For all this progress that was made, this was another major setback for women in aviation. During the peak, however, most women employed outside of the home rose from about 5.1 million, or 26% of all women of working age, to just over 7.2 million, or 36%. There were actually a few notable women who were already in aviation well before the war began. On September 6, 1910, a woman named Blanche Stewart Scott was credited with being America's first woman to pilot an airplane solo. Another famous woman aviator, named Amelia Earhart, took her first flying lesson on January 3, 1921. She would later be known for many aviation firsts by women, starting with becoming the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. A seed was planted, however, and the future is looking brighter every day for women wanting to be in aviation. It took many years after the war, and the pace was slow at first, but decade after decade, the number of women working in aviation grew. Initially, the biggest growth was in jobs that were previously accessible to women, such as stewardesses, known today as flight attendants, and administrative roles in airlines and other aviation companies. But later, women would join the ranks as commercial pilots as well. Today, women make up 10.3% of all pilots in the United States. While still a minority, this number grows every year as new women feel empowered to fly into a new career in aviation. So, as you can see, women played a huge role in the success of World War II. They stepped up to the challenge and took pride of what the jobs they did. They proved that women belong in the same jobs that men do. These women were pioneers that forged a path that is alive and well today. Women can be seen in almost every job in aviation, from ground handling staff to gate agents, administration, management, pilots, and more. There's never been a better time for women to pursue their dreams of flight. Rosie the Riveter may have been a symbol of women in aviation in the past, but the actual women in aviation are the strongest symbol of all. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the highs and lows of women in aviation.